Over the last few years, Warframe has undergone some of the biggest changes in terms of quality of life, content drops, and story. With New War being the epicenter of starting a flagship for a new head team taking on the 10-year-old game, it's definitely a head-scratcher of what to do and where to go with the game in all forms of creativity. So today I'm here to answer your question as either a new player or a returning player. Should you get into/return to Warframe? This will be a recap at the beginning of New War, seeing as most people that I hear that come back to Warframe during my streams have usually taken around a 3-year break. New War had dropped in December of 2021 with, for the most part, positive reaction and feedback, with it dropping extensively longer quests than most, armor bounties, and a few Archon weapons. A little background on me: when it came to this update, I've been playing Warframe for around 8 years now, and I really enjoyed this quest. It felt so incredible to have a quest last as long as it did, and DE taking the risks during the quest for us to not have our overpowered Warframes for the majority of the quest. I really liked that. I really liked them trying to dip their toes into a dangerous territory, just like, you're not going to have your overpowered Warframes anymore. Let's see what kind of challenge you can face before you just get angry and potentially quit in the middle of the quest. Essentially says to you, hey, this quest might take a while, but it felt like an actual sense of doom and helplessness in a universe where for so long we've been pressing just a few buttons to bypass any trials that had come our way. I'd say the only gripe I had was the writing. New War had started off very strong, but then the pacing had taken its foot off the gas. It was just a bit everywhere, as well as quite a few cliches that were just kind of head scratchers for the most part. For Narmer though, that will always be my favorite song. Now let's go into 2022, where we got Angels of the Zariman, where for some reason the Zariman 10-0 is slipping through the void, and we're met with a few wonderful people who've been brought back from the void to give us a tutorial. Quest, sorry. Where we got subtle bits and pieces of our operators' memory during their time on the Zariman while fighting the space baddies. This update brought in Carnins, where we charge weapons with headshots and they transform into a powerful high damage output weapon, as well as most noticeably and mentionable focus rework. I've been saying that for years, just like, can we get some kind of touch up on freaking focus already? Focus schools have been the same for so long, and they definitely were in need of a good touch up. And indeed they did. Plus, not only did they get a touch up, we also got some additional amp arcane slots, which opened up ways to take down angels. Those are the Zariman's most difficult and newly introduced enemy more quickly. However, instead of Void Dash like we had before, we now have Void Sling, which is okay, I guess. I can't remember the reasoning they had changed it, but we're going to move on. It also had a good amount of quality of life changes, like finally getting a prompt when you open a relic. The game tells which part of your gear got corrupted. We also have another update now as far as the UI goes, where it tells you what you do and don't have, what you've crafted and what you've mastered on the relics too. It also gives you the option to choose the last relic that you last opened. That's like a lot of good quality of life stuff for relics and prime pieces for collecting and all that kind of stuff. I think the most noticeable change was shortly after this update, we got another amazing quality of life that changed the way of farming standing for newer syndicates. So instead of before, where if you had a player picking up a syndicate medallion, other players would then have to traverse the entire freaking map just to go pick it up. Now medallion pickups are universal, meaning no more waiting on the other players. Thank you. Very much appreciated, DE. Thank you. Update after that, we got Veilbreaker, the next big launch in mid-2022, where we got essentially what could be considered Swordry 2.0, where we fight the Archons from the New War quest line. Only in these missions we can't respawn, our gear wheel use is limited, and enemies are augmented with higher defenses, kind of like Steel Path. Upon killing the Archons, we get our candy-colored Archon shards that give minor stat buffs to our frames when they're inserted. And we've gotten even a couple more variations of those with Topaz, Emerald, and I believe the last one, let's see, Topaz, Emerald, Amethyst? I think it's Amethyst I'm trying to think of here. Everybody always just calls them Jolly Ranchers, Warframe Jolly Ranchers. There's also call missions that are weekly missions to get stock for the Spartan hoplite-like Warframe named Styanax, the Archon mods, a few weapons, and a couple other trinkets. Now, for one of the best changes we have received in the entirety of Warframe's lifespan: crossplay. Removing the boundary across platforms with small steps over time to ensure stability is one of the greatest moves I think many of us had a great hurrah to. Plus, with cross-save on the way, or actually it is here now at the time of writing this, it was a really big step into reviving a good majority of the player base. Keep in mind that we also received other quality of life updates with each major content drop, like Hydra rework, Urella receiving some touch-ups with augments, changes to AoE weapons, of course most most people hated those. Certain grinds being reduced, etc. They've definitely made some good calls since the change in leadership with Steve Sinclair going to work on Soulframe and Rebecca taking the helm as creative director. Now the next major update that had been teased as far back as 2019, now released in 2023 in January, the Duviri Paradox. And man, I gotta say, this update is the definition of risk-taking when it comes to a game that's been out for so long and it has so firmly established its core gameplay loop to throw something so much more different into it. Instead of constantly being in our overpowered warframes, now we're thrown to a paradox as a drifter where we complete tasks throughout the landscape, granting us some buffs for each task completed. And in these lands, the ruler's mood changes, which also affects the appearance of the landscape, and also how the boss at the end, called the Aurum, deals damage to us. Here's where the community is split on it though. Some people don't like having to use the drifter and slow down their combat. The Duviri, since for so long we've been used to destroying everything in front of us. And then there's other people who don't enjoy what's called the Undercroft, where we use our warframes, because the big emphasis on the update was to be the drifter gameplay and nearly solely that, and adding warframes to this had some people feeling like that takes them out of the world that is supposed to be Duviri and back into the same pretty loop we've been on for so long. Out of this update, we received incarnate adapters for some old-timey weapons, giving them powerful incarnate bonuses like higher base stats, AoE, projectiles that bounce off walls, beams with higher multi-shot, longer range on some melee weapons, and so on. Duviri definitely did not disappoint. I want to take a second to mention the warframes we've received since New War. Stynex, we received this guy for free for 2 weeks if we simply logged on in celebration of hitting the 50th Warframe release. He's a bit of spammy frame, where his first ability still feels a bit wonky. His second strips armor and shields while giving health. Very nice if you can subsume that ability too onto other warframes. It's pretty cool. His third, giving himself an ally's energy regen and shields on kill, a fantastic way to shield gate. And his fourth, applying slash procs by volleys with spears. He was really fun at first, where players could infinitely stay in the air by casting forward than one, but for some reason they decided to nerf him with that. I guess they didn't want it to be a spammy frame, and they didn't want it to be magically OP or something. I didn't understand the takeaway from that. Apparently him going higher with each spear throw, or each spear thrown, it wasn't intended. it's I don't know. I kind of wish they would bring that back. The Warframe, whose kit is a bit weird, but with constant spamming and priming, she'll shred through crowds of enemies with deadly statuses, and she just got a augment to where she can use Fangs of Raksh even more, where it's more nukeability now, I guess you could say. Citrine, the frame, he uses crystals to prime enemies with loads of other statuses and crystallize enemies for some juicy red crits. We got Kalervo, the first frame we've gotten with Evergarb, which makes him immune to knockdown and other statuses so long as we keep it active with this second ability. He made a big cut into builds by having a subsumable ability called Wrathful Advance, which gives increased melee crit chance for a period of time. This made like a lot of the exalted weapon frames, or anything that is like influenced by an ability like that, stack higher and just go up even more in terms of damage. Dagath, we got the Headless Horseman frame, or Horsewoman in this case. She can prime enemies with Viral, give high crit damage bonuses, and strip enemies by dooming them and sending a galloping line of ghostly horses. That animation is pretty freaking sick too. It just feels unique. I feel like somebody worked really hard on that one. The next frame we got was Corvex, and he's a radiation focus frame that's also meant to be like concrete themed. He works well with large crowds of enemies and also has the highest base armor in the game, making him fit the idea of a concrete or solid type of frame. And now we have Dante, who's a wizard focus frame with the spellbook and telling tales by recasting certain abilities. We also got another warframe called Jade, and she's the healer support frame that everybody wanted, because she can heal allies, she can buff power strength, she can buff damage, she can do a little bit of crowd control and armor stripping. She can deal a lot of damage herself with her force ability called Rise on High, I think, or it's called Harmony. It was kind of a weird update. It was apparent. I mean, shut me up if you don't want to hear the spoiler, but now we had the big fetish frame of Wisp having the big ass, and then we have a warframe that was pregnant. It's really weird. Just play the Jade Shadows quest when you eventually get to it. It's strange. I don't want to like spoil anything major on it, but get to her when you can. And now we also have the last warframe I can think of, which is Culmy. She's like an RNG based frame. She's a gambling frame. I actually don't have her at the time of recording this. I don't have her yet. I actually have to work towards getting her, but I have heard she's not like anything like majorly special. But let's look at an update called Abyss of Dagath. This is the update where we finally got changes that can actually make companions of any types actually useful. Praise Pablo. Freaking Pablo, man. He's the Wizard of Warframe. I've been wanting this update for the past 3 years, dude. Like, it's so great to finally have pets be useful. And before I forget, on top of that, we've gotten a second companion rework. They have more mods now. Every companion has their own exalted weapon, just like the Hounds and the Sentinels did. So the Medjite, like the Predicites, the Vulpaphilas, the Kubros, the Kavats, they all have their own exalted weapons now. And it's insane as to what is actually viable, and some of the damage they can output is absolutely nuts. The other thing that came along with the Mist of Goth was a UI improvement where you can have damage numbers fly off enemies and you can scale them to ridiculous sizes. Like you can have them like always take up half your screen. And we got some accessibility changes, like not having to spam our melee button. So for your console users and for controller users, or for anybody who might be handicapped, like if you're missing an arm, you don't have to spam your melee button anymore. You can literally just hold it down now. And you can do the same with triggers too. You can just hold down your right trigger for semi-auto weapons and it just continuously fires. We got cross-platform clans on this update where players from other platforms can join your clan even if they're on the different platform. Hoorah! Now for one of the best follow-ups we've gotten lore-wise since we got New War, Whispers in the Walls. This update was freaking amazing, bringing melee arcanes, which I'm still a little confused about because it's just like, well, melee got brought down to make the guns go up, but now melee's got another buff with melee arcanes, but I digress. A new central hub we got, characters to interact with that don't just seem like paperwork to the world of Warframe. Like it seems like sometimes like you want to interact more with them. Of course, once you get to rank 5, then they kind of do turn into that again, but actually like the ranking up, getting to rank 5, it's like just like in demos, the more you rank up, the more of a story they tell. You get a new kind of mod for melees called Tenokai, where we can utilize heavy attacks more. A new in-game activity called Netracells, we get the chance to get more Archon shards, legendary melee arcanes, and arcane adapters for our melees. The Netracells themselves, we're getting another kind of mode in the next update where we can make the mode, and now we have another mode for Netracells, or not really Netracells, it's called Elite Deep Archimedia, and you have to choose a select couple of frames and weapons while turning on modifiers and challenges in order to get, like, you sacrifice 2 Netracell charges to get access to EDA, or it's called Deep Archimedia, and then you get access to EDA, and you essentially use 2 Netracell charges, whereas 2 Netracells you just have those 2 rewards, but with Elite Deep Archimedia you can get up to 5 rewards. So 2 Netracell charges for up to 5 rewards, like specifically melee arcane adapters, legendary melee arcane, or an Archon shard, or a Tau Forged Archon shard. So it's pretty neat. Whether or not I call it like actual legitimate endgame, I don't know, because it's all dependent. There's one mission, the assassination, that can prove pretty difficult because of damage attenuation on a thing called, the node is called Effervo. I think it's called the fragmented one. Yeah, that's it. The fragmented one. There's that's difficult, and then mirror defense. And sometimes entirely depending on the modifiers, for those 2 specific ones, you can have your world rocked pretty hard. It can actually be a big pain in the butt sometimes, depending on the modifiers and depending on the mission, because I've literally seen the mirror defense objective go from 45,000 health to 0 in one shot. I don't know if that's just like another kind of, just maybe it's something not working properly, but moving on. The quest of Whispers in the Walls was a lead up to what the next major lore update is going to be called, which is Warframe 1999, where we delve deeper into Albrecht Contrati and his discoveries in the Void. I don't want to spoil anything, so go play it if you haven't, okay? When Whispers in the Walls had dropped, we also got an event where we could collect splinters by defeating the new boss called the Fragmented One, in which we could go to a statue in our dojo and redeem arcanes. We hadn't seen an event like this since pre-New War, so it was nice to see newer players getting a chance to get their hands on a rank 5 arcane energized, and among a few others. I have thoroughly enjoyed every update over the last few years, seeing as just so many systems getting overhauls and reworks and upgrades. It feels like actual good, mechanically driven updates where certain things aren't just placeholders that got left behind and like have no real reason to be visited again once you have everything. We have a reason to log on every week and complete tasks to further our gains in power and test our builds, which also making us look at some older weapons that may have gotten left in the dust. The absolute hugest thing that has happened recently is cross-save progression. After so many cross-save win memes, people expecting a lot from a studio that came back from nothing, as well as people no longer having a certain platform to play on and having to switch to something else due to either financial or technical issues, cross-save is finally here. And they did really well with it. I haven't heard anyone losing items or progression or of any sort of counts being lost due to this transition. They definitely did their homework on this, and they made sure that it was going to be done right. The only problem is the method in which you do it. It was kind of confusing for many, so I highly suggest watching a YouTube video on it and making sure you write down your passwords and your names along with the email address that you register with. Highly recommend it. So I think some honorable mentions for the last 3 years is more good old-fashioned framing. We've got many void shell and Tennogen skins along with ephemeras and signed Donnas and things of the like. Fashion isn't a big thing to me, but it's very nice and neat to see some of the ideas people put together in terms of looks for frames and weapon themes. Another thing to mention is Nightwave. We've gotten several augments for weapons that have taken a back seat and were pretty much considered MR fodder for quite a while, since they didn't fall in line with the if it doesn't go boom, I want no part of it kind of ideology. Nightwave has essentially become a free season pass, and it was a great addition to Warframe because you can open it up and it gives you actual goals to work towards and also help with needing or orc potatoes as well as slots. It's a placemaker for some returning players, newer players alike. You can even click on it and it tells you how to complete the challenge. That was a really good thing to do, because there's probably a lot of people looking at certain challenges. It's just like, how in the world do I get access to this? So now to the actual question of the video. Is it worth it to come back to Warframe? In my honest opinion, yes, but I only say this because I've enjoyed the core loop of Warframe and its improvements. For a while, I used to be one of those guys where I constantly complained about what they should do and what they could be fixing, and why so many systems felt redundant and over the top repetitive, as well as things that didn't really feel like they belonged in Warframe. But it held out hope, and Digital Extremes has delivered. Digital Extremes is a studio that seems like a team who actually cares about the project they've worked on for so long, and will eventually see the things that they've created and want to breathe new life into. And sure enough, they have. And they have not disappointed. So let's say you're someone who's made it this far, and you're just kind of like saying to yourself, hey man, all this stuff does sound good, but Warframe's core problem is still too damn grindy and repetitive. It just takes up too much of my time. And you're right. You're absolutely right. If you're someone who only has an average of a couple hours to play every day, and you know there's more games to play out there that are more worth your time, more power to you. RNG heavy games aren't for the faint of heart if you're someone who doesn't want to spend 2 hours trying to find a specific relic or mod, and also doesn't want to fork out the money just straight up to buy it as is. As someone who has over 8,000 hours, you could probably say it's a sunk cost fallacy and a bit of FOMO mentality as to why I didn't take much of a break from the game. There's tons of other games out there I'd like to play, but man, it feels so insanely good to theory craft and ripping through hordes of enemies with big boomsticks and exploding melees, especially with the new melees that we got. There's just so many more different ways to nuke now. It's the variety that you got it's insane now. With other grinding games, asking for monthly subscription or having expansion after expansion, or sometimes both, you feel more obligated to play them since you've made the first purchase and you're having to continue to pay. And with Warframe not asking anything like that, other than just your time, and the fact that it occasionally may put some new shiny stuff in front of you, but it never feels pushy, and it still feels like an excellent free to play model. With all this being said, Warframe is still an evolving game with potential to consistently improve and progress, give wonderful experiences to us gamers, and I can't wait to see what the future holds. So if you're coming back to Warframe, let me know what you've been really impressed by, and also what you think they could do to make the game better. Thanks for watching. Remember to strive proudly and howl loudly. Have a good one. Please improve the Riven system, I beg of you.